Does either side wish to invoke the rule of sequestration at the appropriate time?
Yes, Judge, I've invoked it now.
Mr. Lewis for the state?
Yes, Your Honor, state we invoke the rule.
All right, I don't know who the witnesses are, so each side will need to be mindful of persons entering the courtroom. Everyone, please check your phones. If you're not an officer of the court, your phone needs to be completely on silent for me. Completely powered off. All right, and the camera person, tell me your name, please.
Paul?
All right, Paul, you understand you cannot film any jurors.
Yes, ma'am.
All right. We're ready. Mr. Wooten, I would prefer if you could move the water pitcher perhaps over here so it's not impeding anyone's view. All right, good morning, members of the jury. Welcome back. I hope everyone was able to get home safely with all the storms last night and that you had a restful evening. Before we begin the trial today, there are 2 additional oaths that I need to administer. You can remain seated and raise your right hand for me, please. All right, you shall well and truly try each case submitted to you during the present term and a true verdict give according to the law as given you in charge and the opinion you entertain of the evidence produced to you to the best of your skill and knowledge without favor or affection to either party, provided you are not discharged from the consideration of the case. You shall also well and truly try the issue formed upon the bill of indictment between the state of Georgia and Austin Tybee Ford, who is charged with felony murder, aggravated assault, voluntary manslaughter, and 2 counts of possession of firearm during commission of a felony, and a true verdict give according to the evidence. If you will, say I will. Thank you. Please lower your hands. All right, members of the jury, I'm going to give you some preliminary instructions to sort of give you an overview of how the trial procedure will progress during the week, and then we will begin with the trial. Members of the jury, you have been sworn and impaneled, and you are about to try a criminal case entitled The State of Georgia versus Austin Tybee Ford. The defendant, Austin Tybee Ford, has been indicted by the grand jury of Gwinnett County in an indictment that has previously been read to you. To this indictment, the defendant has pled not guilty and denies each and every allegation contained therein. The indictment is what forms the issue that you have been selected, sworn, and impaneled to try. Before we begin the trial, I will give you some preliminary instructions on fundamental principles of criminal law. I will also instruct you on the role of the judge, the jury, and the lawyers, and give you an overview of the trial procedure. Many of you may have never served on a jury before. It is therefore necessary that these instructions be given so that you have a general understanding of procedure in a criminal trial, what will be expected of you, and how you are to conduct yourself during the trial. The defendant is charged in the indictment with crimes that are violations of certain laws of the state of Georgia. I want to emphasize to you that the indictment, including all of the counts therein, and the plea of not guilty, are merely the legal procedures by which these criminal charges are brought against the defendant. The charges and the plea of not guilty are not evidence of guilt, and you should not consider them as evidence or implication of guilt of any crime whatsoever. This defendant is presumed to be innocent until proven guilty. He enters upon the trial of the case with a presumption of innocence in his favor, and the presumption remains with him until it is overcome by the state with evidence that is sufficient to convince you beyond a reasonable doubt that he is guilty. No person shall be convicted of any crime unless and until each element of the crime is proven beyond a reasonable doubt. The burden of proof rests upon the state to prove every material allegation of the indictment and every essential element of the crimes charged beyond a reasonable doubt. However, the state is not required to prove the guilt of the accused beyond all doubt or to a mathematical certainty. Reasonable doubt is just what it says. It is a doubt of a fair-minded, impartial juror honestly seeking the truth. It is a doubt based upon common sense and reason. It does not mean a vague or arbitrary doubt, but it is a doubt for which a reason can be given, arising from a consideration of the evidence, a lack of evidence, a conflict in the evidence, or any combination of these. There is no burden of proof upon the defendant whatsoever, and the burden never shifts to the defendant to prove his innocence. If, after you consider the facts and circumstances of the case, if your minds are wavering, unsettled, or unsatisfied, then that is a doubt of the law, and you must acquit this defendant. But if no doubt exists in your minds about the guilt of the defendant, then you would be authorized to convict him. If the state fails to prove his guilt beyond a reasonable doubt, it would be your duty to acquit him. Under our system, it is my duty as the trial judge to determine the law that applies to this case and to instruct you on the specific rules of law that you must apply to the facts to arrive at your verdict. I am giving you some limited instructions now and will give you more detailed instructions once the evidence has been presented and the lawyers have made their closing arguments. During the trial, I may be called upon to rule on motions or objections to evidence. Nothing that I say as the judge in making these rulings or at any time during the trial should be considered evidence and should not be considered as me having any inclination or leaning whatsoever in the case. My only interest in this case is to see that it is fairly tried according to the laws and Constitution of the state of Georgia and of the United States. Trial procedure in a criminal jury trial is generally as follows. The attorneys for both sides can make what is called an opening statement. This opening statement is not evidence. Remember that what the lawyers say during the trial is not evidence. It is merely a preview or an outline of what they expect the evidence to be. After opening statements, the evidence will be presented. Evidence comes in the form of testimony given by witnesses or physical evidence that will be labeled for identification. After the presentation of all of the evidence, the attorneys can make what is called a closing argument. It is at this time that the attorneys may suggest to you which laws are applicable to the case and how you should consider them in light of the evidence. And they may point out to you certain parts of the evidence that they think are favorable to their position. The goal of a closing argument is to persuade you to decide the case in their favor. After closing arguments, I will charge you more specifically on the law that applies to this case and will instruct you to retire to the jury room to deliberate and reach your verdict. You have an important role as jurors. It is your responsibility to determine the facts of the case and to apply those facts to the law that I give you. I will instruct you on the law, but you must listen to the evidence to determine the facts as you find them to be. The object of this trial is to discover the truth. During the trial, the admission of evidence will be governed by certain rules of evidence, and those rules were drafted with one purpose in mind: the discovery of truth. Consequently, the rules of evidence seek to ensure that only the best and highest evidence is admitted for your consideration. You also, as the jury, must determine the credibility and believability of any witnesses that you hear from. It is for you to determine which witness or witnesses you will believe and which witness or witnesses you will not believe if there are some whom you do not believe. In determining the credibility or believability of witnesses, you may consider the facts and circumstances of the case, the manner in which witnesses testify, the witness's interest or lack of interest in the outcome of the case, their means and opportunity for knowing the facts about which they testify, the nature of the facts about which they testify, the probability or improbability of their testimony, and the occurrences about which they testify. You may also consider their personal credibility insofar as it may appear to you during the trial of the case. It is important that you pay close attention to the evidence as it is being presented during the trial. If at any time you are unable to hear or see the evidence that is being presented, or if you are suffering from any discomfort that diverts your attention, please feel free to inform me or one of the bailiffs, and I will do whatever is necessary to ensure that you are able to hear and see the evidence that is being presented. If you need a recess at any time, please raise your hand and I will recognize you. It is vitally important that you are as comfortable as possible during the trial so that you can focus on the evidence when it is being presented. It is also important that you view the evidence with an open mind and that you reach no final conclusions until the trial is over. Do not jump to conclusions before all of the evidence has been presented. Also, remember that during the trial, it would be improper for you to discuss the case with anyone or to allow anyone to discuss the case with you or within your presence or hearing. This applies even to discussions amongst yourselves as jurors. During breaks, during the lunch recess, you can't even discuss the case amongst yourselves until you begin deliberations. Mr. Wooten, I'll ask you to hand out the notepads and pens, please. I'm asking the bailiff to provide you with notepads and pens. When you receive your notepad, if you will write your name on the first page, and if you wish to use it for note-taking, begin any note-taking on the second page. If you decide to take notes, please remember that your note-taking should not divert you from paying full attention to the evidence and assessing witness credibility. Your observations of witnesses while they are on the witness stand can be vital to your determination of their believability of the testimony. The notes that you take are for your use only, and they are not to be shared with anyone until you begin your deliberations. Remember that notes are not evidence, they are only memory aids, and they should not take precedence over your recollection of what the evidence was. It is the duty of each juror to recall the evidence, and while you may consider another juror's notes to refresh your memory, you must rely on your own recollection of the proceedings. Do not be influenced by the notes of another juror unless those notes help you in determining your own independent recollection. Notes are not entitled to any greater weight than the recollection or impression of each juror as to what the evidence may have been. After this trial is over, your notes will be collected and destroyed. I instruct each of you that you must decide this case for yourself, and you must do so solely on the testimony that you hear from the witness stand and any evidence that is admitted into evidence. I remind you that you cannot visit any scenes that you hear about. You may not use any books or documents that are not admitted into evidence. You may not read or listen to any accounts of the trial that might appear in the news media. You may not discuss the case with anyone other than your fellow jurors and only during deliberations. At this time, that is going to conclude the court's general instructions, and I will turn now to the attorneys for opening statements. Is there an opening statement on behalf of the state of Georgia?
Yes, Your Honor.
Please proceed.
Good morning. Tori Lang was the 18-year-old daughter of Teresa and Tori Lang, originally in New Orleans, Louisiana. She was a recent graduate of Stevenson High and, by all accounts, a bright, effervescent, beautiful young woman. I did not have the pleasure of knowing her, and her mother and her grandmother are far better equipped than I to tell you about Tori when she was alive. The last time Tori was seen in their neighborhood, leaving the area in which they lived, was about 10:30 on July 27th of 2021. She was seen on a neighbor's ring cam video leaving the area in her car. As far as Teresa and Tori knew, she just did not come back. There was just a sheer coincidence. Teresa was changing the family's cell phone account. So she had Tori's cell phone in order to port the number over from one carrier to another. So they couldn't call Tori. The following morning, Tori still didn't come home. So they reached out to her friends, or the people at least she thought were her friends. One of the people who Teresa reached out to was the defendant, Austin Ford. Austin told Teresa he hadn't seen Tori, didn't know where Tori was, but vowed that he'd look for her and that if he heard anything, he'd let her know. He never let her know. Simultaneously, at about 6:33 in the morning, July 28th, Theodore Young and his wife were taking their morning walk in Yellow River Park. Mr. Young is an older gentleman, will go through the park and pick up cans, goes walking early in the morning, and it was August, so it's probably going to be really, really hot. I'm sorry, July. Still. He sees what appears to be a person lying under a tree. He gets closer, and what he finds is the body of a young woman who has been shot one time in the head. Mr. Young called to her to see if she was still alive, noticed that she was not. Police. Officers with the Gwinnett County Police Department, specifically then Officer Casey Smith and Officer Remy, responded to the scene. They're both uniformed patrol officers. Officer Smith was training Officer Remy. And they did what patrol officers are supposed to do. They assessed the scene, determined that there was more things that they could handle, noted what they could note, and waited for detectives who would do a more thorough investigation of who this young woman might be and what might have happened to They did, the patrol officers, Officer Remy and Officer Rachel Lasky, did locate 2 shell casings. They didn't do anything with the shell casings. What they did was just mark them first with a piece of paper so that they would not be disturbed, so other officers would know not to step on them, kick them, or otherwise disturb what could be crucial evidence in whatever happened to this young woman who was found here dead. They then turned the scene over to detectives. The initial responding detective was then Corporal David Smith. Now, what happens after the evidence is marked and what's there is roped off by the patrol officers? Crime scene investigation and the medical examiner are called. The crime scene investigation, or CSI, with Gwinnett County will take measurements of the scene. They will collect the shell casings, photographs, videos to document the scene so that detectives will have all the information that is available in order to solve what is now apparently a case. The only physical evidence that CSI was able to locate was the 2 shell casings. They did not find any vehicle that appeared to be hers. They went so far as to have a police academy class basically canvass the entire area, lined up side by side, walked the entirety of the park, because as you'll see, it's ultimately a very large area. But they didn't find anything. All we've got from the scene is 2 shell casings. I'll talk to you a little bit about the shell casings later. They then turned the investigation over to the detectives. Or, I'm sorry, over to the medical examiner. Medical examiner's office came and they do what they're supposed to do. The medical examiner's role is to examine the remains of the young lady and to make a determination of cause and manner of death. That is done through collecting observations at the scene and through an autopsy. The autopsy was performed by Dr. Terry. I don't think I need to explain exactly what an autopsy is, but that took place on July 28th of 2021 and into July 29th of 2020. Now, mind you, at this time, as far as the police, the medical examiner go, this is an unknown young woman. She didn't have any ID. There was, at this time, no way to tell just who she was. She did have photos, she did have tattoos, and so officers were able to take pictures of her tattoos in hopes to identify her. The medical examiner, Dr. Terry, did make certain observations relating to, and did make a ruling on her death. What Dr. Terry will testify to is that she was killed by a single gunshot to the head that occurred from 10 to 12 inches away. Now, she can tell that by the manner in which the bullet entered Tori's head and by other physical traces that were left by the shot itself. She is, again, far better equipped to tell you about that than I am, but essentially you can tell to a point how far away a gun is fired. By, if it was very close up, there would be stippling burning. If it's further, there are powder burns. And if it's even further out, there are none of those things present, and so the range would be undetermined. But in this case, Dr. Terry was able to determine that it was between 10 to 12 inches away from Tori's head. She determined that Tori was lying in the place that she was found when she was shot. Which ultimately does mean that the location of the gun at the time it was fired can be extrapolated. Though, because of what was there, what was not there, Dr. Terry was not able to make a determination about the manner of death. So the manner of death in this case is undetermined. But keep in mind, this ruling, this report, and this determination were made on the 29th of July. Meanwhile, at some point, members of Tori's family are able to identify her tattoos by a photograph that have been put out into the news media. And the young woman who officers found in the park now has a name, Tori Lang. Corporal Smith goes to speak with the Lang family and notify them that their daughter has in fact been located and what has happened to her. They also learn that Teresa's Sig Sauer P365 is no longer in her home. Armed now only with this, the investigation continues on. They continue to speak to Tori's friends. They continue to gather information. Due to promotion and just the natural shuffling of the police department, Corporal Smith was promoted and a different detective was assigned to the case, Detective Angela Carter. She continues the investigation from where Corporal Smith picked up. Now, one thing Corporal Smith did find before he turned the case over to Detective Carter was that where Austin Ford lived, his neighbor had a ring camera. The ring camera captured Tori coming over to Austin's house around 10:40 p.m. on July 27th. It later captured them leaving together shortly thereafter. And you can see that Tori appears to be wearing the clothes in which she's found when she is leaving with the defendant. The ring camera later catches the defendant coming home, maybe about 1:40 in the morning, wearing something different. Detective Carter speaks to the defendant by phone, and he continues to, I'll just say it, lie. He does not admit that he was with Tori that night. He doesn't admit that he was at Yellow Park. He does not admit that he knew what happened to Tori. Mind you, this was a friend of hers, supposedly. This was supposed to be a friend. This is a young man who her mother knew her to associate with. A man who, when she was looking for Tori, she thought that this supposed friend would know where she was, would be helpful in finding her, and maybe alleviate her fears that something terrible had happened to her daughter. That's not what he did. He just said, I don't know where she is, and pretended to look for her. But he knew where she was. He went to her funeral. Hugged her mother. Knowing all the while exactly what had happened to Tori. I'll explain why. He did mysteriously skip the vigil that the family held shortly after Tori's murder at the park, at the location of her death. The defendant, though notified, though supposedly her friend, he didn't go to that. But Detective Carter's investigation also involved getting the defendant's cell phone records and his geolocation through Google. One thing a lot of people don't know about Google is Google tells them. Google tells them a lot. If you have a Google app on your phone, it is reporting to Google what your location is. Now, the purpose of this is Google's, and it has to do with advertising and making sure that you get relevant ads because businesses pay money to have their ads put in front of you. And if I am standing at 75 Langley Drive, a business somewhere near 75 Langley Drive might want to show me an ad so that while I'm here, I can patronize their business. So using a search warrant, we were able to get those records, along with his phone records. They show a couple of things. What they show is Austin Ford's phone bouncing off of cell towers near Yellow River Park around the time he left his apartment with Tori on the Ring camera. Then it stops. There's no more pinging, no more nothing. Which would indicate that the phone is no longer sending a signal out. Well, how would a phone not send a signal out? Because you turn it off. The phone then reappears after 1 in the morning, moving at a rate that is faster than one could walk. What does that mean? Well, that means that he wasn't walking, he was probably in a car. It's simply a matter of if you're at, because it doesn't follow you like a little video where you see the dot moving on the map like they do in the phone TV. That's TV. It shows locations and times. And you can calculate the speed it takes to travel between the two locations if you're given the times. And Detective Carter was able to determine that he had to be moving faster than at a pace that someone would walk. Plain and simple. Detective Carter, now armed with this information about his phone records, about his geolocation, the fact that he did not call Tori after she was killed, his supposed best friend, his alleged friend who is lying dead in Yellow River Park, who has told his mother, her mother, I'm going to help you look for her, I'm going to help find her. But he doesn't call her, not one time. Not because he knew about reporting of the cell phone number and where Tori's phone actually was, but because he knew she wasn't going to answer. So armed with this information, Detective Carter interviews the defendant in person. And for the first part of the interview, he continues on with the same line of reasoning and story that he has perpetuated from the beginning. He tries to cast off responsibility for Tori's death onto Scoop. You'll find out Scoop was, I cannot remember his name right now, but he was Tori's sometime boyfriend. Agent Carter was able to determine Detective Carter was able to determine that he was somewhere else at the time. But the defendant keeps bringing him up, keeps trying to cast aspersions onto him. And he continues to do that throughout the interview. Well, at some point, Detective Carter confronts him with the information that she had. I know your cell phone was outside the other. I know you were with her that night. I know that you left, and it was probably in her car, because you were moving faster than you could have been moving if you were walking. The defendant now changes his story. What he tells Detective Carter is that he was with Tori the night of the 27th. That she came to his house despondent and suicidal. That they went to Yellow River Park and he saw that she had her mother's gun. He says they talked in the park, that she told him she was going to hurt herself, that he took the gun from her, placed it on the ground, gave her a hug, that she pushed him away, grabbed the gun, and shot herself in the head. That's the story that he told Detective Carter. He continued on into that he was scared. So he took the gun. He took her car. The gun he disposed of by throwing it in a pond somewhere in DeKalb County. Divers checked the pond, couldn't find the gun, but it was a year after he threw the gun in the pond that they were finally able to check. But the gun was never found. It wasn't on the scene, which is important. He took her car, and his description was that he parked it in the cut. That's a slang term, an alley, just kind of an out of the way place. So he parked the car somewhere, and then he just went back home. The car was found August 1st in a nature preserve in DeKalb County, burned to the frame. Now, unfortunately, there was no evidence that was able to be recovered from the car. It was so completely burned, there's not really a way to determine whether or not even an accelerant was used. But the car was essentially burned down to the frame. This is a murder. Now, Dr. Terry is going to tell you that the manner and cause of death is undetermined. But she made that ruling and that determination on July 29th, 2021, without being a party to or privy to the cover-up, or attempted cover-up, by the defendant, without knowing that the car was burned, without knowing any of the other information that was gathered afterwards. Now, some of that has been given to her, and that would not necessarily change her ruling. But this is why we have Dr. Terry's determination of manner of cause or death is not what determines whether or not somebody is guilty of murder. That is the 14 people. Murder in Georgia, as charged as felony murder, is committing a felony during which the death of another is caused. Well, the notion that Tori picked up a gun off the ground and shot herself in the side of the head 10 to 12 inches away in such a way that it severed her brainstem, which would have stopped her movement, functioning, heartbeat, breathing, almost instantly, while laying down, is far-fetched. The only reasonable way this could have happened involves this defendant's hand on a firearm, which which is a deadly weapon. And to point a firearm at another person is aggravated assault. There are other charges on the indictment, voluntary manslaughter and 2 counts of possession of a firearm during the commission of a felony. The top 2 counts, though, 10 to 12 inches away, everybody knows what a foot is. It's just not a common way we feel to commit suicide. It's, as described by the defendant, just unlikely. It's also contradictory to the physical evidence found by Dr. Terry. Those findings, those physical findings, those are important. In fact, in particular, that she was where she was when she was shot, because that determines where the firearm was. Those are facts. When you look at the situation as a whole, after hearing the evidence from the stand, after seeing video, after seeing photos, I'm going to come back and ask you to find this defendant guilty, in particular, of felony murder and aggravated assault. Because the state will have proven beyond a reasonable doubt. And that's just what it sounds like, a reasonable doubt. It's not a burden the state shies away from. It's not a burden that the state is scared of, afraid of, or feels the need to over-explain to you, but one that it proudly picks up and says, this murderer is guilty of murder. Look at him cover up his murder.
All right, thank you, Mr. Lewis. Mr. Lawrence Lewis, any defense opening?
Thank you, Judge.
Opening statements in a criminal jury trial is supposed to be, and is typically where lawyers outline what they believe the evidence is going to be in the case, the evidence that you're going to hear and see from the witness stand. And that evidence typically consists of facts. Evidence is facts, not feelings. There will be 5 undisputed facts in the case. Fact number 1, the morning of July 28th, 2021, Tori Lang died by gunshot wound in Yellow River Park. That's an undisputed fact. That's the first undisputed fact. The second undisputed fact is Austin Ford is the only other person that's present, if you believe his statement to the police, when Tori Lang is shot, and he, Austin Ford, tells the police, Tori Lang shot herself. That's an undisputed fact. The third undisputed fact, Austin Ford talks to the police face-to-face 8 months after Tori Lang dies, which is also 8 months after the medical examiner has made the determination, I cannot tell if it is a homicide or a suicide. Medical examiner and Austin Ford didn't get together. The medical examiner makes a determination on July 29th, 2021. I cannot tell, based on the science, whether it was a suicide or a homicide. Well, she made that determination back on July 29th. She sticks by that very determination April of 2023. As we sit here today, there's no other medical examiner, expert, or scientist that has contradicted Dr. Terry. So that brings us to the fourth fact. Dr. Carol Terry has just extensive experience. She's going to tell you she's got like 61 or 6,200 autopsies. Let me just tell you right now, that's a very conservative number. That's a very conservative number. She probably has closer to 7,000 or 8,000 autopsies. Since 1990, when she began the study of pathology, when I mean study, I mean the residency. Medical school's over. She does a 5-year residency. She is and has been devoted to pathology. Absolutely devoted. So she's done 6,000 autopsies, and she will testify under oath the same way she testified at a prior hearing in April of 2023, that she can determine with scientific certainty that Tori Lang was lying down, face up, when she was shot. But she will tell you, Dr. Terry will, I cannot determine, the science cannot determine whether Tori Lang committed suicide or if somebody else shot her. That's the fourth fact. That's what Dr. Terry's going to tell you. Facts, not feelings. The fifth fact is, and you're going to learn this, the gun that Tori Lang brings to Yellow River Park belongs to her family. Tori Lang brings the gun and then shoots herself. There's no contradiction to that. The state now wants to talk about all the possibilities. Are the possibilities supported in the evidence? Well, that's not really that important because we get into our feelings now. We get into our feelings. He was supposed to be her friend. Listen, can we just stick with the facts? The facts. Dr. Carol Terry, looking at the science, says it's just as likely that it was a suicide as it was a homicide. Now, we're going to twist that up. We're going to spend 3 days twisting that line right there up. We're going to twist and twist. It's assisted suicide because it's definitely not count 3. I was mad and then I decided to shoot. It's definitely not going to be result of a sudden, violent, and irresistible passion resulting from serious provocation. It's not going to be that at all because the science is undisputed that Tori Lang lays down, lies down, face up when the bullet pierces her head. So there's not going to be any evidence of sudden, violent, or irresistible. That's just there. That's just there. I guess if you don't like the murder charge. So here's the only question you're going to have to deal with. Is it suicide, in which case my client is not guilty of anything, or is it assisted suicide, which is illegal? Because there's no question, based on the science, that's unrefuted. No expert. And Dr. Terry has not changed her opinion at all. So we're going to go back and forth, and we're going to twist this all around, but I'm telling you now what you're going to have to determine. And the state would like for you, get into your feelings and overrule the science. What? Let's just go with the facts. The judge will tell you at the end of trial, we got to look at the facts. You got to put your common sense with the facts. And when you put your common sense with the facts, the only just verdict in this case is going to be a not guilty on all the charges. Thank you very much. Thank you, Judge.
All right, thank you, Mr. Lawrence Lewis. All right, State, please call your first witness.
Teresa Lang.
remember to watch your step coming up for me, please.
Raise your right hand, please. You swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give in this matter now pending before the court shall be the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God.
Yes.
Please tell the jury your name.
My name is Teresa Lang.
And Teresa, who is Tori Lang to you?
Tori, or Kiwi, she's my daughter. She's my husband and I only daughter. And we call her Kiwi. She reminds us of Kiwi. That was her nickname given to her at birth. And she amplifies that to this day. She's like fuzzy on the outside and sweet in the middle. She's so sweet.
All the way and put those microphones right where you're speaking for me. Thank you.
You were saying? Or you did?
Yeah, I'm just remembering how she came about her nickname Kiwi.
Okay.
And her favorite color is green. And
How old was Tori?
Tori was 18.
In July of 2021, where was she in life?
At that time, she was in school, online for engineering. And it was a program she got accepted in for engineering. And she was looking forward to working in the field with engineering because it was going to pay her a stipend, in the program for doing the engineering program. And meanwhile, she was looking for work until that happened.
I'm sorry, excuse me. It's just a little bit distracting. If I could just ask at defense counsel table to kind of minimize the conversation.
Sorry, Judge.
I apologize.
Where did Tori go to high school?
She started at two high schools. She went to Arabian Mountain High School, and then she eventually graduated from Stevenson High School.
To show you what's marked as states exhibits 1 and 2. What are states 1 and 2?
Tori?
Are those both true and accurate depictions of your daughter?
Yes.
Your Honor, the state would tender states 1 and 2.
No objection, Judge.
1 and 2 are admitted without objection.
Your Honor, I'm going to publish them.
Yeah. Can you reach, do you need the click share?
I'm showing State's Exhibit 1, which has already been admitted to the jury. Can you tell the jury about this photo?
Yes, it's a photo shoot we did for her for graduation. She graduated in 2020, and she didn't get a chance to have a traditional graduation because of COVID-19. So we still had our photo shoot, our moment for graduation. So we did a personal photo shoot for her. And she's wearing out her medals and cords and her diploma that she achieved in high school.
When is the last time you remember seeing Tori?
The last time I remember seeing Tori was on July 27 and 21.
You know what time it was?
It was around 3:30 p.m. that day on a Tuesday.
The last time you saw her, did Tori have her phone?
No, she didn't have her phone.
Why not?
She didn't have her phone because I was transferring our services over from Verizon to Xfinity. And that process was very tedious. It was very stressful. It took days for the porting to take place. Every day I was calling to port the lines over. It wasn't working.
And you had
it took like hours, not really days, but like hours, and like a day or so for both of them to complete.
Did you have to have her phone in order to port her number over to Xfinity?
Yes.
So as far as you know, did she have a phone with her the last time you saw her?
No.
When did you come to the conclusion that Tori was missing?
She didn't return home that night or the next day.
What did you do as a result of her not coming home?
Well, Tuesday afternoon, we were over to celebrating a friend's birthday that night or whatever. And after that, when I came home, she still wasn't there. So I went out looking for her. I was driving by her friends' houses and things of that sort, looking for the car, looking for her, calling around looking for her. Couldn't find her.
What kind of car was it that she drove?
She drove a 2012 Nissan Versa, blue.
Did you find it? Were you aware of some of the people who you believe to be her friends? Did you know any of them?
Yes.
Who'd you know?
I knew Austin Ford and just a few girlfriends she had, friends.
When you discovered Tori was missing, did you talk to the defendant?
Yes.
What did he tell you the first time you spoke to him?
I spoke to him shortly after midnight of the 27th. I called from Tori's phone. At this point, her phone was ported over. After midnight, it ported over. So I was able to use her phone and not my phone. So I called him. He didn't answer when I called. But then again, he called me back shortly after.
What did you ask him?
I was like, hey, have you seen Tori? You know, he was like, we're looking for her. He was like, no, I haven't seen her. And earlier that day, he was looking for her. He came by the house looking for her as well on that Tuesday.
Okay,
And
when you say that day, I need you to be specific. So you called him on the 28th, which was a...
Wednesday,
Which was
early,
Wednesday.
yeah, it was like around 12:30 that night.
Okay.
I mean, midnight, or after midnight, going into Wednesday morning.
All right, so that was the 28th, about 12:30, you say 12:30 in the morning?
Yeah, something like that.
This is the 28th into the 29th or the 27th into the 28th?
The 27th into the 28th.
So you called very early morning on the 28th,
Yes.
and he said he didn't know where she was.
And he called me back, and I was like, hello, and he's like, I can hear him in the background saying, this Tori, like whispering like he's talking to someone. This Tori, like he was shocked to hear Tori on the phone. I said, no, it's not Tori. So, Mom, we're looking for Tori. Have you seen her? You know, because he was looking for her early that day on Tuesday as well. I haven't seen her. So he said, you haven't seen Tori? I said, you sure you haven't seen her? He said, no, I haven't seen her. I was like, okay. So I was on to the next, trying to call someone else to see, have they seen her?
Did you talk to him again before you found out what happened to Tori?
No.
Did you talk to him after you found out what happened to Tori?
Yes.
When was that?
I found out what happened to Tori on the 29th, which was a Thursday. So it was maybe late Thursday afternoon I spoke with him.
What was your conversation about on that Thursday afternoon?
When I called him Thursday, I'm like, listen, I know Tori came to your house to see you Tuesday, whatever. He was like, yeah, Mom told me that you were going to be upset with me. I'm like, why? Because I did see Tori that night. He just didn't tell me he saw her that night. You know, he said he saw her that she came over to his house.
Did he say where she went after he said she left her house, his house?
No, he said he didn't know where she went.
What happened after that? Tell me about what happened in relation to this after that second time you spoke to the defendant.
Well, when I called him, I told him I knew that Tori came over because I seen her on the Ring camera, my neighbor's Ring camera, resurfacing around 10:30 Tuesday night. I know, she came back to the house. I knew she was leaving the house to go back over there because she went to the mailbox. It looked like she got something out of her mailbox. I was like, I knew she came to your house because she came to your house around 10:30 and she left to go back out, and I knew she was coming by you.
This is from your neighbor's ring.
Right, I just told him I saw him on a ring camera, and that's when he admitted, yeah, she did come over, to his house. And I asked him, so she didn't say where she was going? He's like, no, she didn't say where she was going.
Was that the end of that conversation with the defendant?
No, he made a statement about when Tori came over, she wanted $300 to find someone to hurt her. I'm like, hurt her? Like, what are you talking about?
Did he explain?
So he made that statement. Like, she wants somebody to hurt her. Like, why she wants somebody to hurt her? What are you, like, it was confusing. Like, why would you say that? Like, what are you talking about? So when he told me that statement, I went and told the detective what he said.
Detective?
This was Corporal Smith at the time.
Okay.
He was the first detective on the case.
Well, let's concentrate on your contact with Austin Ford. Were there, I guess, events that were scheduled by the family after you found out about Tori's death?
Yes.
What was the first of them?
The first event was a virtual, kind of like visual we had for her.
Where was that held?
In Yellow River Park, where they said she was found, at the tree.
Did you tell her friends about it?
Yes. And a lot of her friends was putting it out in social media for me and things of that sort. And of course, I told him about it.
Did he go?
No, he didn't.
Did he say why he didn't go?
When he came over to my mother-in-law's house, him and his mother came. He was like, no, I can't come this time because I have to go to a football game or something like that. I'm like, football game? Like, okay, whatever. And then his mom was like, he's not ready to come out right now. It's too soon for him to come out. And then he was like, well, I don't want to be a green bean. Like, what are you talking about, a green bean? I don't want the guys that hurt Tori come looking for me. I'm like, why would they come looking for you? What are you talking about? He was just confusing me. He was just acting weird and saying crazy things like somebody's going to come looking for him because they hurt Tori. And like, why would they come looking for you? It just wasn't. I just left it alone.
So you held the vigil under the tree where Tori was found. But
yes.
The defendant, who was supposedly her friend, did not come.
No, he didn't come.
Was the vigil before or after Tori's funeral?
It was before.
Obviously, you held a funeral for Tori.
Yes. Yes, I did.
Did you notify the defendant of it?
Yes.
Did he attend?
Yes.
Did you have any contact with him at the funeral?
At the funeral, after the funeral, I seen him after we did a celebration of life for Tori, a second line, New Orleans style second line, because we're from New Orleans. And at the end, he came up to me, he hugged me and embraced me, saying, I'm so sorry, and all this, yeah, we was just having a moment at that time.
Was that between Tori's funeral and now, was that the last contact you had with the defendant?
No, I spoke with him after the funeral several times, but I had another event for her. Her birthday was in September, so we had another party for her celebration. He didn't attend that either, but I was talking to him after the funeral.
Okay. At any point, did he tell you anything about what happened to Tori?
No.
At any point, did he, I guess, shed any light upon her death?
No.
Did he ever tell you that he had been there at the time that she died?
No.
Now, you also, there was also, when you reported Tori, did you report Tori missing?
Yes, I did.
Who'd you report her missing to?
I called DeKalb County Police because we lived in DeKalb County, to report her missing on Wednesday afternoon
Did
of
you also?
28th.
I'm sorry. Finish.
It was July 28th. I reported her missing.
Did you also at some point report to police that your firearm was missing?
Yes, I notified the detective, the Gwinnett detectives when they came over to tell me what happened to Tori. At that time, I notified them about it. But that's when I really noticed it was missing.
Did you know what happened to it?
No.
To show you what's marked as State's Exhibit 3, 4, and 5. You recognize these?
Yes.
What is State's Exhibit 3?
That was the casing my gun was in, or where I bought it in.
Is that a true and accurate depiction of the gun case that your firearm was in?
Yes.
What is State's Exhibit 4?
It's the receipt from the location I purchased it from.
Is that a true and accurate depiction of that receipt?
Yes.
And State's Exhibit 5? You recognize it?
Yes.
What's State's Exhibit 5?
Some bullets.
Were those the rounds that were located inside the gun case that you had?
I think so, yes.
Your Honor, the State would tender States 3, 4, and 5.
Objection, Judge.
States 3, 4, and 5 are admitted without objection.
Do you recall what make and model gun it was?
It was a SIG compact.
Showing you State's Exhibit 3 is being published to the jury. This is the gun case. There's a yellow band that says, currently upside down, but P365 10+1. Is that the model of gun that you had?
Yes.
And is that a secondary magazine for it?
Correct.
This is State's Exhibit 4. This is the receipt for the gun that you bought.
Yes.
And does it show that you purchased a Sig Sauer P365 9mm?
Correct.
Did you know what happened to that gun?
No.
Did you ever see Tori with that gun?
No.
Do you know if the defendant has ever been in your house?
Yes.
Has he?
Yes, he has.
Was this prior to Tori's death?
When you say prior, you mean?
Before?
Yes.
On July 27th, were you home all day?
No.
Did you have your gun with you?
No.
At any point, did you ever give the defendant permission to do anything with your gun?
No.
Did you ever give him permission to touch your gun?
No.
And the defendant, well, let me ask you this. Is Tori's alleged friend Austin Ford in the courtroom today?
Yes, he is.
Identify him, please.
He's right there with the gray suit on.
That's all the questions I have at this time.
All right, thank you. Cross-examination from the defense.
If I ask you a question that you don't understand, you just let me know, and then I'll try to rephrase it so that you and I are on the same page. Okay? Let me start here. What day did you feel like Tori was missing?
Well, July 27th to the 28th.
July 27th to the 28th. And she was living with you at the time, is that right?
Correct.
She always lived with you, is that right?
Yes, for the most part, yes.
In between the time she graduated in 2020, when COVID had just first started, and the time of her death in 2021, she lived with you during that time, is that right?
Yes.
So was it the morning of the 28th when you didn't see her that you felt something was wrong, or was it the night before on the 27th?
The night before, going into the 28th.
Going into the 28th. And when did you first learn that Tori had been located?
Thursday, on the 29th of July.
And when did you first discover that your gun was missing?
Actually, that morning of the 29th.
Okay, so was it before you learned that Tori had been discovered that you discovered your gun missing?
Yes, that morning, yes. Because I
Okay.
was getting ready to go out looking for her again, so I wanted to bring it along with me.
Okay, good. So you were going to go out looking for Tori. You went to get your gun, and at that point in time, you saw that your gun was missing. Is that right?
Yes.
All right, and I'm going to show you what's been marked State's Exhibit 3. Was this where your gun was normally kept in this case?
No.
All right. Did that case house your gun at some point in time when the gun was purchased?
When it was purchased, yes.
When it was purchased. And typically, did you keep your gun in a holster, or did you keep it in that case?
In a holster.
In the holster. And typically, did you keep your gun by your bed? Where did you typically keep your gun?
Most times I used to carry it with me because I have a license to carry. Most of them I carry it with me. So sometimes I leave my purse, or if I'm home, it might still be in my purse or whatever.
All right. Do you recall the last time you actually saw the gun?
Yes.
When was that?
It was around July the 19th or 20th.
July 19th or 20th of 2021.
Correct.
Is that right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, July 19th of 2021. Had Austin Ford been in your house at all in July of 2021?
It's a possibility he has because he always come over when we're not there.
Okay. Were you out of town in between July 19th and July 28th of 2021 when Tori died at the park?
Yes, I was out of town previously.
All right. And did Austin Ford habitually come to your house or come into your house when you weren't there?
Yes, he does.
Okay. Do you recall at a prior hearing indicating under oath that Austin Ford rarely came to your house? He normally would stay at the corner and Tori would go out and meet him. Do you recall saying that at a prior hearing?
Correct.
Okay.
He don't come there when we're there. He come mostly when we're not there.
Okay.
And if he come to the house, they'll go outside and chill outside or whatever, walk up the street or go somewhere together.
All right. So if I understand your testimony here today in front of the jury, you were out of town between July 20th and July the 28th. Is that right?
No, I went out of town. It was that weekend. Wherever that weekend. I think I want to say that it was July 17th. I was in New Orleans, something like that.
Okay.
We came back around the 19th.
All right. Did you have the gun in your possession when you were in New Orleans?
Correct.
Okay. So the gun was in your possession on the 17th, 18th, and 19th. When you got back from New Orleans, where did you place the gun?
It was still in my bag, I think. In my bag I brought.
In your bag, and was your bag typically kept in the car? Or did you typically bring your bag into the house from the car?
In the house.
Okay,
It was my travel bag.
I got you. July 19th, you return from New Orleans. You have your travel bag. Your gun is in your bag. Got it. Did you then go back out of town after July 19th?
No.
Okay. So between July 19th, when you bring the travel bag in with the gun, and July 28th, when Tori is shot, Austin Ford is not in your home. Is that fair to say?
No, I'm not sure.
Okay, well, let me take a step back. Did you go out of town after you came back in from New Orleans on July 19th of 2021? Did you go back out again?
I don't have to go out of town for him to come over. You know,
Okay.
I don't have to be home when he come over. I don't necessarily be out of town when he comes over. He comes over when I'm not home.
Okay, I want to understand a few things. In between July 19th, 2021 and July 28th, 2021, when Tori was located at Yellow River Park, were you working full time?
Yes.
Okay, and so you would leave the house when you were working, is that right?
At that time, I was working from home.
Right, because that was in the middle of COVID, right?
Oh, you asked me a question? Yes, I
Yes,
guess.
ma'am.
Oh,
July of 2021, we're in COVID at that time. Am I right?
yes.
Okay, and so you're working at home, correct?
Yes.
All right. So I'm just trying to nail this thing down. You come back from out of town. You have your gun, July 19th, 2021. You recall last seeing the gun, July 19th, 2021, correct?
Correct.
And in the next 9 days, you don't go back out of town, and you're working from home, correct?
Yes.
Right, and you can't tell the jury that Austin Ford at any time in those 9 days came to your home. Is that fair to say?
No, because I don't know. I don't be at home all day long.
I
And he did come to our house, and within that time, he came on the outside. He didn't come inside. When I was there, he came.
Yes, ma'am. I guess the prosecutors ask certain questions about whether or not Austin Ford may have been inside your home and taken your gun. That's really what I'm asking about. Do you understand that?
Okay.
Okay, you came back from New Orleans on the 19th of July 2021, correct?
Okay.
You
Yes.
had your gun with you, right?
Yes.
And Tori comes up shot July 28th, 2021 at Yellow River Park. Is that right?
Yes.
In those
She was
9
found on the 28th. Yeah.
Right. In those 9 days, in between the time you return from New Orleans and the time Tori is shot, you are working from home, correct?
Yes, and it's only in the early morning.
Okay, and in the afternoon, what are you doing?
Whatever, running errands, going out.
Okay,
I don't stay. I'm not a homebody, so I work in the morning. I do whatever I have to do for the day.
I understand, ma'am, but we're still talking about July 2021 in the middle of COVID, correct? You're not going to tell the jury that while there were restrictions in DeKalb County about moving around, you were just out and about 6, 7, 8 hours a day in DeKalb County in July 2021. You're not going to tell the jury that, are you?
Yes, I am, because around that time we were able to go. People was going out more, shopping more. Everything was like almost back to normal.
Okay, so if I understand your testimony correctly, in the 9 days when you returned from New Orleans and in between the time you returned from New Orleans and the time that Tori is shot, your testimony is Austin Ford could have come to your home and taken your gun. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay. There we are. Do you typically keep the gun by your bedside at all?
I do keep it there by the bedside sometimes, not all the time.
Okay, not all the time. And so in the 9 days when you're out and about, you're not carrying it with you in those 9 days. Is that right?
No,
And
I
you're
wasn't
not
carrying.
keeping it by your bedside. Is that right?
No.
Right, and even though Tori didn't tell you that Austin had been at the house, and you don't have any evidence that Austin had been at the house, your position today is Austin might have been at the house and might have taken the gun. Is that right?
Typically, she don't tell me that he's at the house. They just come over. So, yes.
I got you. Do you have any sort of security ring camera or anything like that at your house?
No, my neighbor does.
Okay, the neighbor does. Did the neighbor show you any ring camera that showed Austin pulling up in a car and coming into your home any time in the 9 days in between the time you returned from New Orleans and the time that Tori was found dead?
I didn't check the ring camera for those days, and I asked him. And only time I checked the ring camera was when we discovered that she wasn't here anymore, to see did she actually return back home that night or whatever. And he did come by our house on the 27th, look for Tori several times.
Okay,
And my
good.
husband caught him outside as he was pulling up, saw him outside, and he came prior to that. He said, looking for Tori.
Yes, ma'am. And he was on the ring camera then, correct? Or you don't know?
I didn't look back for the time
Okay,
frame.
that's
I just
fine.
looked for the time frame that the last time I seen her.
Yes, and after Tori, after the police discovered Tori deceased, and after you had determined that Austin Ford had lied to you, you didn't follow up with your neighbor to see if Austin Ford had been at your house in the 9 days prior to Tori's disappearance. Is that right?
Well, I didn't know he did anything to her. I just said he's seen her. I didn't think to go look back for that for him.
You understand at some point in time, the detective in the case told you that she's taking warrants against Austin Ford. Is that right?
Yes.
Do you recall when that happened?
Yes, that was Good Friday of 22, April 15th, 22.
April 15, 2022. In between April 15th and 2022 and today, did you ever go talk to the neighbor to see if the neighbor had ring camera footage of Austin Ford coming to your home in the 9 days prior to Tori's disappearance?
No,
Okay.
that wasn't my job to do that. I mean, I thought the detective would work on that part. I wasn't thinking about that.
Yes, I understand that, ma'am.
I
But
was in shock to find out it was him, so.
yes, ma'am. And you find out in April of 2022, correct?
Correct,
Okay, good. So you're still trying to figure out what happened, are you not?
correct.
Okay, and so when we start talking about how the gun left your home, you don't know how your gun left your home. Is that right?
Correct.
You just know it was last in your home on July 19, 2021. Is that right?
That's why I last put my eyes on it, yes.
Okay, when you last put your eyes on it. So just in an effort to figure out if Tori took the gun or if Austin was inside your home in the 9 days, did you ever ask a neighbor if they saw anything or if the ring camera captured anything?
Back in April 22, when I found out they were putting warrants out?
Yes, ma'am.
No,
Anytime after
no,
that?
I didn't.
Okay. Is that the only gun that you purchased in the last 3 years? The gun that was in that case?
Yes.
All right. And the type of ammunition, State's exhibit number 5. Is this the type of? Are these the rounds that were inside of the? Is that the ammunition that was inside of the gun case?
Yes.
And you gave the case and the ammunition to the police, is that right?
Correct.
All right, were you familiar with the type of rounds those were when you gave those rounds to the police, the ammunition to the police?
No.
Okay, do you recall if you gave that to the original investigator, Detective Smith, or if you gave that to someone else, the ammunition along with the gun case?
To Corporal Smith.
Corporal Smith. Were there letters that you also gave to Corporal Smith when Corporal Smith came to the house?
Letters I gave him. He went in Tori's room and collected her journals.
Okay, so
It was separate sheets of journals that she was journaling.
All right, Detective Smith collected any correspondence that he thought was relevant from Tori's room. Is that right?
Mm-hmm. He collected everything, yeah.
Did he show you any of the letters or the diaries that he collected from Tori's room?
I saw some of them. It was basically she was journaling to God, praying to God. She journaled when she prayed to God, and she journaled to God when she just reading or whatever. It was just basically journals that she was. I didn't read all of them.
Okay. Did you see anything in the journal that would have led you to believe that she and Austin weren't best friends in July of 2021?
Well, her journal wasn't about her best friends or anything like that. It was just, like I said, she was just praying to God and stuff like that. She prayed by writing it.
I understand. Did you understand my question?
Yes.
My question was there anything in the journal that would indicate that she and Austin were not best friends in July of 2021?
Objection, Your Honor.
I'll allow it. If you can answer that question, ma'am, please do so.
I didn't read everything, so what I read was only about God. That's all.
Okay. Were Tori and Austin best friends in July of 2021?
They were friends or whatever.
Okay. They weren't. You wouldn't describe them as best friends. Is that right?
Absolutely not. She may thought there was more than just friends or whatever. She probably considered him as a friend, a friend or whatever, but I don't consider him that.
Ma'am, we're not talking about what you may have considered. We're talking about your daughter in terms of the contact that she had and how she described Austin and talked about Austin. Was Austin and Tori best friends in July of 2021?
They were close friends.
Okay. And how long had they been close friends?
Maybe like 4 to 5 years.
Okay. All through high school, correct?
Not all through high school, but like 4 or 5 years.
All right. Tori had just graduated in
2020.
in 2020, correct?
Yes.
Okay. She only spent 4 years in high school, correct?
Yes, but she met him at Stevenson, not at Arabia. She went to high school in Arabia Mountain to high school.
Okay.
But she met him when she went to Stevenson.
Okay. And what year was that? What year did she start Stevenson?
It had to be like 2018, I think.
Okay, so she met him.
2018.
Okay, she met him in 2018, and she died in 2021. That would have only been 3 years. Yet you said they were friends for 5 years.
Like 4 to 5 years, yeah, something like that.
Got you. She graduated in 2020, did she not?
Tori graduated in 2020.
2020 from Stevenson High School, is that right?
Correct.
And at the time, after she graduated, was she working?
After she graduated, she did work some.
What type of work did she do?
But prior to graduation, she was working in the mall at a clothing store.
Okay.
And another location in the mall.
Okay. And then in 2020, I understand it was COVID when she graduated in May of 2020, correct?
Correct.
I understand it was COVID going on at the time, but was she working at all in 2020?
No, they later. It wasn't working. The mall was closed, so no.
Okay, so when COVID hit Georgia and things started shutting down, Tori was sort of at the house?
Yes, or about her grandmother or whatever, yes.
And how far does her grandmother live from her?
Less than 10 minutes.
So between May of 2020 and December of 2020, Tori was sort of in between your house and her grandmother's house. Is that right?
Yes.
All right. 2026, in 2016, when Tori was a freshman, did she have a suicidal ideation issue that put her in the hospital?
Well, can you explain what that means?
I'm going to rephrase the question. In 2016, was Tori hospitalized?
Hospitalized? There was an incident where we took her to the hospital.
Okay, and was she held for more than 24 hours?
But we were there waiting. We're just waiting, typically waiting. I can't remember how long it was. It was a long time, though.
Okay, so you don't remember her actually being checked into the hospital, is that right?
But it was seeing her, yes. It was seeing her at the hospital, local hospital, children's hospital, yeah.
Okay, well, let me take a step back. You end up taking Tori to the hospital, correct?
Correct.
Did you end up leaving Tori at the hospital? Did they keep her at the hospital?
I didn't leave her at the hospital, no.
Okay, when you're there at the hospital and the hospital's doing their examination, what are they examining her for? What's the issue that had you taking her to the hospital?
Well, she wasn't feeling good. She made a statement saying that she took some medicine or whatever, so they was checking her out for that.
Okay, so it was a physical issue that she was there for. She was there for a physical issue like a stomach ache, is that right, in 2016?
I can't recall. It was, I can't remember if it was a stomach ache or not, but she said she wasn't feeling good. She took some medicine or whatever, made a statement about taking some medicine. So we were concerned parents, so we took her to the doctor to see what was going on.
Okay, so it wasn't any issue about she may have taken any sort of drugs or anything like that. That
Oh, no.
wasn't the issue in 2016, is that right?
No.
Okay, and although you testified, do you recall testifying at a prior hearing that she was checked into the hospital in 2016?
Checked in?
Checked
I mean,
in.
you asked me, no, I don't. She went to the hospital.
All right, did she go to the hospital again during all of the time that she was in high school?
For
whatever reason.
No,
For whatever
no.
reason. So prior to her death, the only time Tori had went to the hospital was 2016 when you took her to the hospital. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay, but you don't recall exactly what the issue was other than her saying she didn't feel well in 2016. Is that right?
She made a statement. She wasn't feeling well. She took some medicine.
Okay, and when you say she took some medicine, she took medicine that was prescribed to her?
I'm not sure. She didn't say it was. I don't know what medicine she took.
Okay, so Tori took some medicine, wasn't feeling well, and then you took her to the hospital, but you don't know where she got the medicine from that she took. Is that right?
She made a statement saying she took some medicine. Come to find out, it wasn't nothing. So
Okay, you say it wasn't nothing, but I'm just trying to understand. It wasn't medicine that you and her family had taken her to get a prescription for prior to you going to the hospital, was it?
no.
Okay, so the first time that you had ever heard that Tori had consumed any medicine in 2016 is when Tori said she's not feeling well and she needed to go to the hospital. Is that right?
She said she wasn't feeling well, so we took her to the hospital to see what was going on.
Right, but the reason she wasn't feeling well is she had taken some medication that wasn't prescribed to her. Is that right?
She stated that she took some medicine.
Okay, but you don't know if she actually took that medicine. Is that right?
Correct.
Okay, and you don't recall what the actual issue was, a headache, stomach ache, or anything like that you took her to the hospital for. Is that right?
She said she wasn't feeling well.
Okay,
But she
I
said she
got you.
took some medicine. I don't know if she
I
was.
got you. How many times did you speak to Austin Ford after Tori died?
I can't recall. We spoke numerous times.
Okay, did he ever appear when he was talking to you to be under the influence of any drugs, medicine, or alcohol?
No.
Okay, when he attended the funeral but not the vigil, is that right?
Correct.
Okay, and although as you described it, he was talking weird, he didn't appear to be under the influence of any drugs, medicine, or alcohol, is that right?
No.
And when he attended the funeral, was his mother with him?
Yes.
Okay, so it was Austin Ford and his mother that came to the funeral, is that right?
And someone else, because they signed her book.
Okay.
Her guest book.
And was that the last time you saw Austin Ford face to face?
No.
When did you see Austin Ford after that, face to face?
When I was in his neighborhood, passing out flyers of Tori, putting up flyers in the neighborhood.
Okay, and at that time, did you have a chance to speak to him?
Yes.
All right. Did he appear to be under the influence of drugs, medicine, alcohol at that time?
No.
Had you ever seen Austin Ford in the times that he had visited your home under the influence of any drugs, medicine, alcohol?
What was the question?
The question was, at any point in time when Austin Ford came to your home in the either 3, 4, or 5 years when he knew Tori, did you ever see him under the influence of any drugs, medicine, or alcohol?
No.
Thank you very much. No further questions, Judge.
Be direct from the state.
I think there was some confusion about being checked into the hospital and being admitted. So let me ask you this. Did you take Tori to the hospital?
Yes.
Did you leave her there?
No.
Did she spend the night there in a room where she had a doctor or nurse assigned to her and had to be released by a doctor before she could leave?
No.
In the letters that you read where you said Tori was praying to God in the letters, did any of those letters mention hurting herself?
No.
Did they ever mention a gun?
Absolutely
Of any kind?
not. No.
Did they mention finding someone to hurt her?
Absolutely not.
Did you ever really give a formal interview to Corporal Smith about Tori?
No.
When did you, well, I guess, when did you first talk to Corporal Smith about what had happened to Tori?
It was the day he came to tell us that she wasn't here anymore.
Was that the day you gave him the gun case?
Yes.
At any point, did you really talk to him about her life, about what was going on with her at the time, as far as you knew?
No. He didn't ask me anything like that, so.
That's all the questions I have. Thank you.
Recross.
Very briefly, Ms. Lang, I thought you had testified earlier that you didn't read all of the stuff that Detective Smith collected from your daughter's bedroom. Did you testify to that?
I didn't read everything.
That's correct.
I didn't read everything, no. It was
Right.
too much stuff to read, so.
Right. So when you answer the prosecutor's questions that you didn't see anything in the letters or the diary about hurting herself, you didn't read everything in the letters and the diaries.
My
right?
answer was that I read, what I read didn't indicate that she seen a gun, wanted a gun, or wanted to hurt herself. That's what I read, so.
And that's fair enough. And what I'm trying to understand is when, based on what Detective Smith had collected, did you read 90% of what he had collected or 10% of what he had collected from your daughter's bedroom, her correspondence, her thoughts?
No, I didn't read 90% of it, no.
I don't have any other questions. Thank you, Judge.
Redirect.
No, Your Honor.
All right, ma'am, you can step down, please.
Okay.
Watch your step. All right, and Mr. Wooten, if you can move the exhibits back up here to clear the witness stand, and if you'll call your next witness.
Theodore Young.
All right, just come forward, Mr. Young, please, all the way up front. When you come around, there are a couple of steps, so please watch your step for me coming up. If you can be seated comfortably and pull yourself right in front of those microphones for me, please.
Point, sir, you raise your right hand, please. You swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give in this matter now pending before the court shall be the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God.
Yes, sir.
Please introduce yourself to the jury.
My name is Theodore Young.
Mr. Young, in what area of Gwinnett County do you live?
South.
Do you live near Yellow River Park?
Yes.
Are you familiar with Yellow River Park?
Yes.
Why are you familiar with Yellow River Park?
I've been going over there about 20-some years.
What do you do when you go to Yellow River Park?
Oh, usually walk.
Do they have a walking trail there?
Yes, sir.
When do you typically walk?
Most times 6 o'clock in the morning, 6:30.
In July of 2021, were you taking those walks in the morning?
Yes, sir.
Did you take them alone?
No,
Who did you walk with?
my wife.
How long have you been married?
How long have I been married?
Yes, sir.
50 years.
And did you and your bride of 50 years go for a walk on the 28th of July, 2021?
20th of July?
Yes.
No.
Okay, let me ask you a different question.
Is there a walk-in late July where you noticed something that was not typical of every other one?
Yes.
What was that? What was it that you noticed that was not the usual fare?
There's a body up beside the tree.
Tell me how you came to know that and how you saw it.
Well, we started in the parking lot and walked towards the north end of the park. And there's something underneath the tree, so I went over to look at it and found out it was a body laying there. And I asked the person there, "Are you okay?" No response. And that's when I called 911. And Gwinnett County Police come, and they took the information and told me to leave.
Did you touch the body?
No,
Did you move anything around the body?
no,
Did you take anything away from the area in which the body was found?
no,
Did you see anything on the ground around the body?
no.
Do you know if Yellow River Park is in Gwinnett County?
Yes, it is.
That's all the questions I have, Mr. Young.
Cross-examination.
Thank you, Judge. Mr. Young, I only have a few questions. Thank you.
You phoned the police about 6:20 a.m., is that right?
Approximately that.
About 6:20 a.m. And how long was it before the police arrived?
Probably the matter of maybe no less than 12 minutes, 12
Oh.
minutes, 15 minutes, something like that.
Okay, somewhere between 12 and 15 minutes.
Yes.
And after you phoned the police, did you sort of stay in that area until they arrived?
Yes, to let them know about where I was located in the park. This is a pretty big sized park.
Got you. And after you phoned the police and the police indicated that they were on their way, did you ever get any closer to the body?
No,
All right. And in terms of proximity, what's the closest you would estimate that you ever came to the body?
maybe 2.5 to 3 feet.
2.5 to 3 feet. Do you recall ever seeing any shell casings, the discharge from a firearm?
No,
Okay. Do you recall ever hearing any metal clinking as you sort of moved towards the body?
no.
Thank you very much, Mr. Young. Thank you, Judge.
Any redirect?
None, Your Honor.
All right, sir, if you'll watch your step coming down, you are free to leave.
Okay.
Thank you, sir. Please watch your step. All right, we're going to take our mid-morning recess at this point. I will refer to these as your precautionary instructions throughout the week. Remember not to discuss the case during the break. Don't do any research. Don't allow anyone to discuss the case with you within your hearing or your presence. Leave your notepads and pens in the chair, and we'll be at recess for 15 minutes. 15 minutes. Anything from the state before we recess?
No, Your Honor.
From the defense? All right, Mr. Ford's with the deputies. We'll resume at 11:10. 11:10.